Hi, welcome back to Deep Dives with New Perspectives. I'm Michael Bartlett.
And I'm Merrylin LeBlanc. Hi, Michael.
Hi, Merrylin. So if you guys like our show, if you enjoy what we're talking about, please hit the like button, share with your friends. We're both professional astrologers. We do readings, we give talks, we both write on the subject. What's going on in the stars today, Merrylin?
Wonderful, wonderful occasion today. This afternoon, I believe at 4 p.m. Mountain Time exactly, Mercury goes direct. Yay. Woo-wee. It's been retrograde in the sign of Gemini, one of its own signs. And boy, I think it's been a textbook expression of what it can do when it's retrograde. And I think about Gemini and our thought processes in some ways the way our intellectual mind works and our connections, etc. And it's been very strange.
Well, it hasn't just been that. I mean, now we've got we've got Jupiter retrograde in Pisces. We in 4 more days, on the 26th, we have Neptune going retrograde in Pisces as well. The 2 eclipses happen in Sagittarius and in Gemini. And it's like, oh my God, it's like the mutables are getting nailed to the wall. I don't think I've ever felt so worn out. It's like everything feels almost insurmountable.
I was thinking you were going to say nailed to the cross, except that not much is happening in Virgo to make it a cross. It's what we call, loosely speaking, a T-square, which can be intense in the sense of one is being forced to take action. Yes.
But when we're talking about Mercury and Jupiter specifically, we're talking about the traditional rulers for all 4 mutable signs. So Virgo's getting pulled in no matter what. Virgo doesn't have a choice. And maybe it's just about Virgo activating. Maybe it's just about all of those of us from the 60s, have all those planets are feeling more harried because it's creates a grand cross, as you say, which is a little more stable. But since it's mutable, I remember a friend of mine saying at one time, a mutable cross being the whirlwind within the windstorm. The whirl, like what do you call it? A whirligig, like in a farm, a wind generator.
Right, dust bunnies, etc. Oh, that too.
That, and also I actually also think of those things that are in front of car washes. That air blown thing that looks like a human almost, but it's blown with air, and it just woo woo.
Well, with mutable signs, there's an awful lot of energetic expressions. It's typically said that in those signs, something from the past is being left behind for something new, in the future. They're transitional signs to the 3 modalities that we have: cardinality, fixed, and or succedent, or that's when you're dealing with house systems, or the mutable. It's like mutable is you start out with cardinal, where something is initiated, something is begun, and then it's stabilized with the fixed signs. And then the mutable signs, it's sort of like, okay, we can let go of some of that to actually have something new come in. So it's an important part of the progressive movement, or the spiraling onward movement that life can be. And one of the things one other thing about mutability too, that I noticed many years ago, I was in a workshop with Vicki Noble, who at the time was married to Jonathan Tinney. Jonathan Tinney is an astrologer, psychotherapist, and Vicki Noble, Mother Peace tarot cards and other things that she's been involved with as well over the years. And it was a large group of people, and they divided us up by sun signs, and all the mutable signs went in one area, the fixed signs in another, and the cardinal signs in another. We all had the same task, And it was a task about, or it was creating, I forget exactly, but it was sort of like, okay, you have to create an organization. You know, what will it be like? What will you have? And they observed these three groups. And one of the things they pointed out afterwards, which most of us noticed because you couldn't not notice, was that the mutable people were having a great time. It's very easy for them to let go of procedures, let go of established decorum, and just party. And so they were laughing and they were throwing out things evidently, and they shared what their ideas were and stuff. Whereas the other two groups were somewhat, it's funny because the cardinal ones, the initiators, they couldn't get an agreement. But we fixed people, and this was sun signs. We fixed people. We had everything kind of organized and structured.
I got done early.
It was funny, but that was kind of that opened up a love for mutability on my part, because it was so delightful, and I have many mutable friends. And we all have mutability in our charts. It's just some of us have it punctuated more than others. And
all
you
and
I
have it punctuated right now.
Right now by transit, yes.
By transit.
Yes.
And the other
but are we having fun right now?
Sorry?
But are we having fun right now?
Well, I mean, the thing is we're talking about it being, we're talking about the rulers of mutability being retrograde. So that normal forward fun action maybe isn't feeling as fun. Maybe, it's about, because the truth is, I think what I like to think about the full cycle, the forward cycle, the station, the retrograde, is that it involves having to do something like, things that involve the words that begin with RE, and rest being one of them. And mutables, I think one of our hardest challenges. Most of my planets are mutable, even though my luminaries and my ruler of my chart is fixed. The rest of my planets are all mutable. And it's like getting me to just stop. I'm actually kind of thankful for my fixed planets because they actually help me to stop sometimes.
So you're saying that we've been in a period where it's been important for us to take a pause, and we're still in that period, because even though Mercury is going direct today, the other retrograde planets are going to be retrograde for weeks to come still.
I think of Jupiter and Neptune and Pisces. I mean, for one, I think of spa day, to be honest, taking a nice spa day. But the other thing is, confusion, fogginess, slowing, being caught in the unclear waters. These are the things that I kind of think of. Jupiter and Pisces at its best is not clear waters, right?
A lot of uncertainty, definitely continuing with that energy. What do you see as the differences between Jupiter and Neptune, who both are said to rule Pisces?
I see it almost like as an octave sort of a thing. Jupiter's that first, one can maybe consider Mars to fall in this category, but I really think of Jupiter as being like the first social planet, of relating to other people. And then Neptune's that part that is really, first of all, unless it's really prominently placed in touching, personal planets, I think it's a hard planet to integrate into oneself. I think it's something that takes time, but yet is almost always, but is also there. It's one of those oxymorons, right? It's like, the all that is, which, when I like to think of it, Pisces is almost like the dark matter in space. We don't know, what is it that keeps everything in space? What is it that keeps the stars and the planets and everything in, and what is that thing that's all around it, which actually comprises more of what is than what isn't in our universe?
So maybe even though they've discovered these black holes in space that seem to take in. Maybe we're already in one of them and we just don't know.
Oh my God, that's a really great. Wow, that's an interesting theory. I like that one.
Which is, you know, like, to me, it's the Neptunian concept of wherever we are, we're all there and everything is us and we are everything.
Right. And I mean, and to be honest, I mean, I think that is one thing that Pisces, Jupiter, and hold on one second, please. And I also think of like Jupiter is like buoyant. I think of something as like buoyant, and Neptune is being, you know, that watery or that, you know, that other, I don't know. There's a lot of it that just, I think of it, I guess I would say in octaves. And I can't help but think of spirit when I think of Neptune.
Yeah. Well, definitely. Yeah. Jupiter, I think more of organizations like, or institutions like religion, and not, it's actually the organizations of religion, not it's Neptune to me is like the institution of religion, so to speak, where it's non-defined. It's just there's this connection.
It's religion in the broadest sort of sense. It's the idea of the organization of thought and ideas and beliefs around something greater than ourselves.
Whereas Jupiter provides an ideology of a particular group, what their doctrines are, their dogma, the rules of life,
philosophies, right? Higher philosophies
they live by, etc.
It's almost like, in a way, Jupiter
just takes that all and strips it down to the core.
But Jupiter is almost like the gateway drug, right? Jupiter's like the gateway to Neptune in a sense, in that it's like it allows us to go like, oh, there's something more than our mundane. Because, you know, when you think of it, it rules Jupiter, it rules, it rules Jupiter, it rules Sagittarius, it rules Pisces. Sagittarius is a traveler. You know, we think of Pisces as being like in the sea. So either one of them is like you're in a sense kind of out of one's element, right? We're kind of testing ourselves. We're having to be in relationship to change, right? That's what the mutable signs are about, is it changing from one season to the next season. You know, like how sometimes, especially here in the Midwest, you know, we have, you know, winter. Actually, I think spring is an easier example. You know, spring goes on, and it's like really nice and cool for a little bit. And all of a sudden, boom, we have that like 80-degree day. And it's like, oh my God, it's summer already, you know, but it's not. It's that the back and forth dance of the Pisces time period.
Yeah, so, well, there you go. I mean, this is kind of the times we live in. And it's interesting because of Jupiter being retrograde in Pisces. And you just, I don't know why I flashed there. This isn't religious. But the Supreme Court ruling this week on athletes at the university level. And one program I was listening to, commentator said something like, and why are universities actually promoting sports? How did that happen?
It began,
and yet there is a connection that we see with Jupiter. That it's the Sagittarian connection of, you know, the study of a subject and on various levels, you know, getting more, deeper and deeper into it and broadening one's understanding of it. And all subject matters are included. And you know, Jupiter was the ruler of the Olympians, and we had the Olympic Games even, you know, so the physical body is very much a part of Jupiter's realm. And, you know, and he was such a shapeshifter, just as today's player Mercury was. They both knew how to shift shape, change shapes. And it's sort of like how you structure the body even, and broadening our knowledge about what the body is capable of.
When I think about, like, when you talk about the university thing, it's like, and Jupiter's like almost also about well-roundedness, right? That's the idea with Sagittarius. So you have to go outside of yourself in a sense, go out and travel to the lands unfamiliar into. What I always loved, what I enjoyed about college and university was going out and meeting people who I probably wouldn't have met otherwise, and learning other ideas and thoughts that I had not been privy to in my adolescence, so something that like you said, broadens the understanding, broadens the perspective, allows for the idea that there are other people on the planet. It's interesting, the discourse and the dialogue that is occurring around. I think my dog just got stuck behind the sofa. Oh, she's backed up. Well, that was really nice retrograde. Good retrograde motion there, Lily. Good retrograde motion. It's funny. Usually we have a topic, that we discuss, and today I think, and it's a little more. I think I'm a little more happy and familiar in this territory than I think you are. But I love the way that you always like ground things and bring the threads together. But just being kind of potpourri-like and kind of darting around, because that's the mutable energy, right? It's like it's gathering from these different spaces. It's funny. The other thing I think about is the late degrees or early degrees of a sign too, that are also, those parts of the actual chart are also very mutable in a sense.
We have Jupiter in the early degrees and Neptune in the ending degrees. They're kind of like bookending the sign of Pisces for us right now. And so what comes to mind with that for me is that, like, this whole Jupiter in the news. Supreme Court rules, laws, that's Jupiter's realm, as well as dealing with the whole issue of sports in universities, both the sports and the universities or the colleges. That's Jupiter's realm. So Jupiter is really up front. And maybe that's the cardinal energy that we associate with the beginnings of things.
And it's funny, like what I'm also thinking of, because Saturn, as you know, is also going retrograde in Aquarius, and Saturn is the traditional ruler of Aquarius as well. So we've got all these rulers that are kind of like going, maybe this is the time, because the truth is what's been happening for a very long time, especially in sports like that, is that college athletes have been basically, for sake of a better word, prostituted, right? They're basically, oh, here, we're going to give you a very little this and a very little that. Meanwhile, the Johns above them are just making millions and millions and millions of dollars, which, by the way, when it comes to universities, it's helping pay the bottom line for them, right? It's helping them fund the ever increasing, or actually ever seemingly decreasing number of enrollees in the schools, right? It's helping to pay for those bills and pay for the athletes and pay for the teachers. And
well, it made me think too. We are the United States, in my opinion, based on the Sibley chart for the Declaration of Independence. We're a Jupiterian country. We have Sagittarius rising in that chart, one of Jupiter's signs. We also have Jupiter in the sign of Cancer, where it's said to be exalted, and the opposite side of the chart. And I listening to this in the news this morning, I'm going like, I never really thought about this, nor because I'm not a sports spectator, so I don't pay that much attention to what's going on in the, when games are being played and televised and all that. I'm not there. But do colleges and universities in other countries have sports teams like we do here in the United States?
Wow, I can't.
I have to look this up. It was a thought that I had this morning, because I mean, it doesn't make our news. It doesn't come, on our news feeds, on mainstream television, so to speak.
Well, the other thing I'm thinking of is one of the quotes, one of the lines or one of the statements one of the Supreme Court judges said was, the NCAA is not above the law. And if that isn't a Jupiterian statement, right? Because that was the thing, that was always kind of the issue with Zeus, was this thing of like, being above the law and seemingly giving these laws that also included him. But, his siblings had to come up and kind of beat him up a few times because he wanted to be above the law, Zeus being the old world name for Jupiter, right? I want to be above the law. And so it's fine. And it'd be interesting to see, will all of this, and then I think, and to be honest, I think the difference with it is I think that Saturn and Aquarius is kind of going like, hey, are we being equitable? Are we being humanitarian? It'd be interesting to see what goes on now that when Mercury goes direct, what happens with Trump actually, will some of these court cases have been held off for so long in these investigations, will there be finally some movement forward on them? They're going to have to tread lightly, so he doesn't become a martyr, which is another Piscean element, right? We have people who really
don't give him ideas. The next time we see him, we might see a crucifix behind him. No,
well, I mean, he's already playing that part in a sense, and I think if he, he already has a large segment of the population who have pity on him. This idea of the poor little rich person, that's also very Piscean, Jupiter and Neptune, right?
Yeah.
How do you get the because it's about this sympathy or empathy. Empathy is a much better thing to have than sympathy. Sympathy is like, oh, you poor thing. Empathy is like, oh, how can we teach you to fish and feed yourself rather than creating a system that keeps you in this position? Another element I think is the Biden plan, right? Of like, elevating the lower classes, lower economic classes, of getting services to them in a way that actually allows them to help support and generate for our whole country and feel like they're, contributing individuals and are able to support themselves, which is what most of us want to be able to do.
Yeah. Where are we going to be? Hard to say.
Kind of leading up, I think, all of this Pluto that's going to be coming up and moving into Aquarius, right? I mean, I think this,
that's 2023, so it'll be here before we know it. Yes, but
tick tock.
Yeah, this is where I think it's important to also look back at what happened the last time, even though it was 250 years ago, that Pluto changed signs from Capricorn to Aquarius. We could get a little bit, the history is a grounding factor. It doesn't mean that there won't be surprises. There won't be something that we didn't expect. But the fact that change that shifts on a global level, let alone any group from that level inward, happens very slowly, even with individuals. For some, it's very fast, and for others, not at all.
Except when you get Uranus involved with it, right?
Well, with Uranus, you make me think about the opposition of Uranus to your natal Uranus, which happens around 42, right. Might be a little earlier, a little later, give or take a year or two. That I can remember going through that, and one of the questions that I had on the other side was looking at people I know, very close friends, people I know very well. And for some of them, they had their own experiences, which were in some ways similar to mine, that we could talk about. Yeah, this was like a great awakening, and I feel more connected to my soul. I didn't really know it the way I know it now. And others, it was like, did anything happen at all? And you know, it speaks to free will, and at that time, and still does to me, that some people suppress what's going on inside of them. Don't let it out, don't deal with it, and just get through it. And other people, they maybe they're at a stage in their own evolution that it was just like a crack into another reality that they treated like it was just an odd thing, and they put it in the closet. I have no idea. I don't have full answers to that question, because I think to have full answers, one would have to do some intensive questioning of people whose midlife did not significantly change in terms of its outer expression.
Right, and what kind of planets might be with that Uranus? What planet, what also were those individuals already doing kind of like their life's purpose? Because that's kind of like what I feel like with that Uranus is kind of like, you know, you're going along doing your thing and you think your path is this way, and that Uranus comes in and goes, hey, wait a minute, you know, or it's almost like that, what do you call it? A distillation point, right? A lot of great thinkers, writers, artists, come forth with almost like one of their like aha moments in that time period, right? That allows them to just like kind of almost deepen their work, find their way. But I also think it's almost like an ever cascading period, right? So you go from each of the things that goes on from that point, that, you know, it's like all of life, it's the gradual act of becoming.
Hmm. From what you were saying, I wonder, you know, maybe I'm thinking of people that I look at their whole life and I don't think they've changed that much at all. And
some people don't need to. I mean, I think, you know, I think I remember hearing, I don't know if it was Jeff Green or Richard Tarnas or someone, but they said something about, you know, in each generation, and especially when we talk about those outer planets, we're talking about generational groups. Each generation, oh my God, I just lost where I was going with the thought. Oh, I love when that happens. Hold on 1 second. So that, you know, there are kind of three parts with each generation. There's the part that kind of stays with the past. I mean, it's almost like the cardinal, mutable, and fixed is kind of how I see it as well. You know, it's like there are three parts to each generation. Some really hold on to the past and really don't want to change. You know, you go into their house, like a friend of mine, you know, the sister and her husband are kind of like have idealized the 1950s and are kind of like wanting to completely live that kind of lifestyle. Well, there's an individual, those are two individuals who clearly don't want to be in the present moment. Like, I don't know how that is to be in that, but, you know, and then there are people who are forward thinking, and then there are people who are kind of in present with what it is that's going on. Mm. And that's kind of like how I look at it. And there's also, you know, all the different ways that we get to be, right?
All the different ways that we need to be.
We get to be.
Get to be. We get to be. Well, what comes to mind when you say that is a stuckness, that even the Uranus energy of breaking things up, you know, it's like a tornado coming in and picking it up the roots, picking it up from the roots and swirling it around. And yet a part of them psychologically, perhaps inside, is saying, this is the way that I know I can control my life, or this is what I've been taught. And even though there's this craziness going on, it's going to pass. I'm going to just hold. I mean, they're frozen almost in it. And so they might be beaten up and thrown around and land somewhere and then go, it's over, and then go back to where they were. But that tells me of a psyche that is literally frozen.
Or, you know, that has a thing of that they're working with perseverance in their life, right? You know, this like this almost, you know, some people can almost turn themselves into stone in a sense. And I think of like Taurus in that way. It's like, you know, okay, I'm just going to endure. I'm going to push through it, and we're going to make it, you know, all the earth signs in a sense, you know, in their own different way. And then it's like, okay, I made it through. Okay, what's next, you know?
I was thinking of the planet Saturn when you were saying that, to the frozenness.
Yeah, Saturn and Taurus, you know, Saturn in one of the earth signs. It's a very different.
Well, I have Saturn and Taurus. So,
and who moves you? Who moves you? You move yourself, right?
Well, yeah, my values and my values are very caught up in transforming and also these since midlife, I would say also in all the hidden truths in the occult world. But you know, from my youth, from my birth, it was very caught up in. I mean, I have South Node in Pisces. So, you know, it's like I've come from a deeply spiritual tradition of soul experiences. And that may, you know, I know I'm just talking loosely, but it may be you have to explore that. And I've not, it's been years. I think I at one time have looked at some people I know's charts from that perspective of why don't I see anything significantly transformed here or changed in dramatic ways. But it's been a long time since I've looked at that because so many of the people that I interact with these days have responded to the midlife calls.
Yeah, those other individuals who really aren't changing aren't probably going to seek an astrology reading.
No, but they're friends of an astrologer.
Right. But that isn't all the more that, you know, because, yeah, well, anyway, but. Well, I think I mean, we could clearly continue rambling on wonderful topics. For those of you who are still with us, thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate comments. Please leave comments. Please share the videos with your friends if you think they would like it. Again, we're both available for readings. How do people find you, Merrylin?
Moonwiseastrology.com. That's all one word, moonwiseastrology.com. And also, I do Moonwise on KSFR at ksfr.org. There's podcasts of Moonwise Show. You'll find me there.
Perfect. And on my website, you go to coremichael, Michael.com. I've got free resources, talks Merrylin and I have done over the years on Moonwise and other fun stuff to read. But thank you all out there. Good luck through these transits. I think, you know, try and take it easy. Try and create space for yourself and take a little bit of a rest. I know that's really been big on my agenda this time.
All right, Michael, take care. Bye for now.
Bye.